too soon. Oh well. Hi, welcome to Film Stash. My name is Douglas Campbell, and today we are going to be talking about Deadpool's 1 and 2. Maybe we'll talk about X-Men Origins Wolverine, we'll see. In honor of the upcoming Deadpool and Wolverine film coming out in just a mere couple of weeks. I cannot wait. And next week, before that film gets released, I will have a special guest and we will talk about the Wolverine trilogy. So you might want to stick around for that. That might be quite fun to watch. I'll come clean. I haven't really rewatched these movies too much since they left the movie theater. Now, don't get me wrong. I have both movies on Blu-ray and DVD, and I enjoyed it quite a bit when I went to the movies initially, but I don't really know if my thoughts changed all that much. So with this video, I'm really looking forward to seeing what my opinions are now, like so many years removed from when the hype was fully up to what it was for these two films. Let's just jump right into it. Oh, by the way, in case you haven't seen either two Deadpool movies, come on, why have you waited this long? Check them out, they're fun. I'm just gonna put a spoiler alert for anything I talk about, just in case. So, alright, here we go.
I thoroughly enjoyed both Deadpool entries and their comedic tacklings of the superhero genre. Both Deadpools provide a similar experience in terms of visual aesthetics, camera work, story component, and sense of humor, but both have elements that make them stand apart too. Alright, 2016's Deadpool. After years of Ryan Reynolds campaigning for a Deadpool spin-off at 20th Century Fox, Tom Rothman and the studio granted some money to create a CG demo reel. It was leaked online mysteriously, with no one claiming they did it. Ryan Reynolds. This would eventually evolve into the first Deadpool opening action sequence. And honestly, it's quite a sight to see how it looks in the initial test footage versus the final product itself. There's some things I like more in that test footage, but ultimately what we got I think was really fun too. Now, this film, it was on the back burner for years, and Ryan Reynolds' misfire with Green Lantern and the risk of a rated R movie, it really made the first Deadpool an underdog story as to whether it would succeed or not. And there was a lot of people who were fans of the original comic that wanted it to succeed. But in the end, it was a massive success for a medium-sized budget, and it led to pretty much Ryan Reynolds' career getting reinvigorated and the character getting redeemed in the public eye. And it broke that barrier for the R-rated comic book movie, because now studios aren't afraid to put him out there. So let's look at the positives. Now, for the first Deadpool, it exists in the X-Men universe in a loosey-goosey kind of format, where they reference the main series, but usually just for comedic effects, and it establishes their own path. I think, honestly, it is so great because the continuity with these X-Men movies, they never were the strongest, so why should Deadpool follow it? The action sequences in both movies are pretty fantastic, and with Deadpool's ability to heal fast, you get a little odd and comedic moments that are really great. Deadpool's on-screen persona, it's an amalgamation of Deadpool's comic counterpart, who knows they're in a different medium like a comic book or a movie, and it's merged with Ryan Reynolds' public persona, who, funny enough, he actively shits on his own career from the previous iteration of Deadpool to Green Lantern. And I think what it formed back then was a protagonist we've never really seen in a superhero movie before. Now, I know the Marvel Cinematic Universe tried to do this with She-Hulk to not as positive of reception, but I'm just glad we're able to still get Ryan Reynolds. Both Deadpool movies, they are in a really interesting place. It's a tightrope act, because you have a superhero parody where you have this main character who breaks the fourth wall and doesn't take the story seriously. Yet, within that parody, they have to find a decent superhero story to tell that will engage the audience enough that, you don't discredit the movie itself. They chose, I think, the best course of action. They chose a basic revenge story with the origin story. So audiences could get behind the character, and the character could focus enough on the story, yet they could be somewhat disconnected and tell all the funny, dumb jokes, too, that Deadpool's known for. They use romance to kick the story forward, and the romantic chemistry between Ryan Reynolds and Morena Baccarin, it's serviceable. But the biggest praise I could give this story, besides the action and Ryan Reynolds, it's the supporting cast all the way. Now, in both of these movies, the supporting cast is hilarious, and the comedy comes both from the character quirks and their interactions with Deadpool. Both of these films utilize the comedic duo, the straight man and the foil, where Deadpool will be the crazy one, pushing the buttons here and there, causing mayhem. And the other one, they just take it. They slowly get driven crazy by his antics, and so much fun comes from that. We've seen this over the years with various comedy duos, from Abbott and Costello, you got Key and Peele, there's so many more. And the best part about this movie, not just this movie, but the other Deadpool movies, and hopefully within Deadpool and Wolverine, is that you get a different comedic duo established. In the first film, you had Deadpool and Colossus. In the second one, you get introduced to Cable, and now he's the comedic straight man. And in this upcoming film, Hugh Jackman's Wolverine's gonna be the straight man. And oh my god, from what I've seen so far, I hope it's great. When it comes to comedy movies, I don't really have a high bar of critiques other than just make me laugh. Just make me laugh. And if you make me laugh, that goes a long way. And honestly, for a comedy, if you have any crazy cinematic choices that you want to include that makes the film pop out even more, that's a bonus. So my main gripe with the first Deadpool is that we established Deadpool to break the fourth wall to the audience. That's his shtick. And occasionally, and this is my problem, there's a supporting character named Weasel played by TJ Miller, and he says lines a couple of times that borderline break the fourth wall too. No offense, that is Deadpool's shtick. And usually, Deadpool is the only one that's about to, interact with the audience. And everyone else is stuck in what is their reality. So, really, Deadpool should be the only one poking fun at this concept and doing this format. And anyone who kind of edges close, I don't know. I just don't think it works whenever you get TJ Miller to do it. Now, with the first Deadpool movie, it proved that crude, irreverent movies within the superhero genre, they could not only find an audience, but they could also make money if you do it well. Since Deadpool, crazier and cruder things have come out from the genre, like The Boys, DC's animated Harley Quinn show, or Invincible. And I'm going to be real, by comparison now, Deadpool looks, it's a bit tamer than what it was. Reynolds' performance, and the fact that it is highly entertaining, it does offer fun critiques on the cliches of the genre still, and I think that props it up to where it's an 8.5 out of 10 for me.
Oh! You know what that means? That means it's time for intermission! Yeah! Where's the popcorn? Alright, so this week we have black raspberry cheesecake. I wanted something that looked kind of Deadpool-esque. So you could just imagine that's the eyes on his mask and the red of his mask. So, alright, let's just try it. Alright, so there isn't much of a smell to it. Let's just get an even mix of white and red, as we can see here. And just... That is very sweet. You can definitely taste some of the raspberry. There's a nice sweet and fruity taste to it. It's got a nice crunch to it. I'd give that a solid 8 out of 10. My poop is probably going to be a different color tomorrow morning, but this is so good.
Deadpool 2, 2018. Alright, so Deadpool 2, it's not the underdog that it was a couple years ago. It has proven itself now. And honestly, I think it still is able to maintain and keep a lot of the magic that made the first movie work. But comparatively, I think it stumbles in a few places. Deadpool, the things I like about it, I think it does continue walking that tightrope act pretty well. This time around, it's not like the first film where it's balancing an origin story and a revenge plot. This time around, it's doing it's doing a comedic interpretation of the older hero who tries to help a child go on the right path, who then also learns to accept family along the way. Pretty much, they're making fun of Logan, which coincidentally came out a year before. The cinematography and lighting with this one, like, I think it is so much better than Deadpool 1. Because the cinematography in the first one, it is just mostly this gray aesthetic, which works fine. It makes the suit pop. But this time around, like, especially if you look at the opening sequence, for example, it is a lot more colorful and the camera work's dynamic. And that's mostly because of David Leitch. He previously worked on the first John Wick, so you kind of put that together, it makes sense. And continuing with the straight man per movie, Josh Brolin as Cable, he makes for a truly menacing antagonist from the future, before then ultimately being paired up with Deadpool. He's pretty gruff at first, and he stays gruff for most of the movie, so honestly, I am just so curious how they're going to make him interact with Wolverine for the third film. Like, Deadpool and Wolverine, that's going to be great. I'm hoping that it could be different enough, and not just lines that you could have made Cable say, but you're making Wolverine say it. I'm interested in how that dynamic is going to play out. And the supporting cast itself, it still does wonders. I still like Blind Al, Weasel's okay, but we get a great new addition in Domino. She's a superhero whose superpower is luck, and she gets, besides being funny, she gets so many great action sequences in the middle of the movie that truly I haven't seen in a superhero flick before. It's played up mostly for comedy, but it works great, even if it looks a little fake. What also makes these movies cool is that essentially they atone for the sins of the past X-Men movies by pushing for more comic accurate portrayals with these characters. You get Deadpool, who's more talkative and violent. Colossus is Russian, but he's also a lot bigger, and he's a Boy Scout in personality. You get the Juggernaut. He looks more like the comic design, and he's also a lot bigger than X3. And soon Wolverine, he's finally get to wear the uniform. And honestly, I like seeing how they get comic iterations that have been done before within the main Fox X-Men, and they correct. Ultimately, I said this movie, it had a couple hiccups. And unfortunately, I'm just not as crazy about the film's story this time around. It isn't as gripping for a Deadpool story where he shouldn't take it seriously and neither should we as the audience. Now, I understand it is essentially trying to mock the movie Logan a little bit, and there are funny moments and hilarious jokes that also carry over from the first movie, but the film itself, it just takes itself a tad too seriously. The pacing is fast and that's great, but then once it gets to the final act, things start to slow down and the ending itself slows down and grinds to a halt, but it's able to cross the finish line, and I guess that's what matters. Honestly, if you want to know my opinion, I think the post-credits scene, that should have been the ending to Deadpool 2. Him going through time was hilarious. That truly was what they should have done to send people off. Deadpool 2, it's just plain and simply not as strong as Deadpool 1, but it was still a lot of fun and a decent sequel. I'd give it a 7 out of 10. It wasn't bad. Okay. So, I'll talk more about this movie next week with my guests, but Deadpool in his first appearance, oh my lord, he is so bad. I know it's a little cliche, everyone's talked about how bad this portrayal is, but having not known who the character was when I first saw X-Men Origins Wolverine years ago, I didn't think the concept of a Frankenstein mutant built off of other abilities was a bad concept. And I didn't know who Deadpool was, so I didn't know how egregious it was, but upon seeing these movies years later and then going back to it, holy crap. What were they thinking, man? Like, that is such a horrible idea. Like, really, like, what were they thinking? That's just, like, what everyone was saying is true. It's just, that's a terrible idea. Like, why would you want to do that to your fan base that's going to see these movies? Like, either use that concept with some randy mutant or don't do it at all. Or if you're going to have Deadpool in it, just have Deadpool in it. Just don't put these two ideas together, because ultimately you got what you got with it. And ultimately, Ryan Reynolds and the creators behind the Deadpool movies had every right to make fun of that decision.
So for this week's recommendation, I wanted to keep it well within the superhero genre, but in a way that kind of also captured the same irreverence and comedic capabilities as Deadpool. Now, while this one isn't done nearly as well, and there's a lot of stuff that hasn't exactly aged the best in it, I'm recommending 2008's superhero movie, starring Drake Bell and Leslie Nielsen. Essentially, it goes the airplane method. It takes the very basic superhero origin story that was Sam Raimi's original Spider-Man, but it pokes fun where it can and adds jokes where they might be able to add jokes within that story, while also doing a bunch of other stuff here and there that satirizes the Fox X-Men movies and so many other superhero nonsense and nerd culture. There's a bunch of stuff. It's not a perfect movie, but it is within the Deadpool spirit, and that's why I'm recommending it here today. Well, that's all the time we have for today here at Film Stash. My name is Douglas Campbell, and if you excuse me, I gotta add to the stash.